Yesterday I had some problems with my display settings. Okay, so good morning, and maybe some of you don't know me. I'm Klaus Schrödl from Omnis Software Germany, I'm not from Hamburg, but from the southern part of Germany, Bavaria, where I mostly care about customers in southern Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and do some consulting, some training, and so on. Okay, and today it's about the integration of Omnis Studio Remote Forms into WordPress. So first question to you also, who of you has been working with WordPress or knows how it works? Okay, so first some facts about WordPress itself. So it was initially released in 2004, and it's completely open source. So that means that the source code is posted, I think, also on GitHub, and it's maintained by a company called Automatic, which is more or less guiding and accomplishing the development of WordPress. So in the beginning it was a simple block system, which within the years evolved and changed into a full-featured content management system, CMS, like others on the market. And in between, so I have been looking at this website, statista.com, last weekend. So in between, WordPress has a market share within all CMS-based websites of a little bit over 60%, 60.1%, and other CMS systems like Joomla, Magento, Title3 are much behind that. So the second one is Joomla with a 6.2% market share. So that means that WordPress here has a really strong position. And when you look at the overall market share of websites, of complete number of websites worldwide, then WordPress-driven websites have a market share of 30%. So this is something you can't neglect. The current version of WordPress is 4.9.5, so the update frequency is rather fast. So they also have lots of security updates. So the system requirements, the technical base of WordPress is PHP. So the current version used is 7 point something, I think 1, or current version is 7.2, but it runs also with PHP 7.0. The database used beyond is MySQL, version 5.6 or higher. There are also possibilities to run, or you have the option to run WordPress also with Microsoft SQL Server with some changes and updates and some plugins, but in that case I wouldn't recommend that, so MySQL is just fine. Then the platforms WordPress is running on is Linux, Windows, Mac, and the web service Apache, IIS, Tomcat, to name just the most important. Benefits of using WordPress compared to other content management systems. First is easy installation. It's really fast to install, even if you're not an experienced user or a webmaster or a programmer. Something like that usually takes you about 5 to 10 minutes, and you can really start editing your pages and enter content. You don't have to have any HTML, CSS, or PHP programming skills to a certain extent. So, but it can help a lot to solve things more easy and elegant. Then, a big advantage, there is a huge worldwide user and developer community with some forums and how-tos and websites where people are publishing blogs about WordPress. So if you have a question URL, you can be sure that it will be answered very fast, or you will find an article about your specific problem. The documentation of PHP and WordPress as well is available online. It's very comprehensive and well structured. And if you want to change the layout of your page, of your website, then it's also rather easy by changing themes and using the preview editor, so the Wesel editor, and it's rather easy to adapt. There's a lot of themes, design themes available. Most of them are, or many of them are free. Then benefits of WordPress are two. WordPress is very well expandable, so the functionality you have out of the box is rather limited, but there are many plugins with all kinds of functionalities available, and I checked it on May the 12th, I think last Saturday or Sunday. There were actually more than 55,000 plugins available. Okay, many of them are covering the same purpose, and so for one purpose you have maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20 plugins you can choose from, but the pure number tells you, okay, if you have something to do, something to solve, or whatever, the likability that you will find the plugin is very high. And like WordPress is free, also most of the plugins are free, or they are offering a freemium licensing. That means that the basic version is free, and if you have want some extra features, you have to pay a little fee for it. Mostly it's between 20, 30, maximum, $40. From a developer's side, WordPress has a rather stringent programming model. It's more or less object-oriented. It's rather easy to adapt. You have a lot of APIs for different purposes, dealing with pages, with posts, with users, with everything you have inside WordPress. What I also like about it is that WordPress has a quite good structure, and the application levels or layers are quite good separated. So you have a database layer, which you usually don't see at all when you do some Word or some PHP programming in WordPress, so adapting your site. And you just have to deal with the direct WordPress API, and which usually does the job. Then, like I said, it's easily respondable, first with plugins, and if you don't want to use plugins or want to write your own, or just want to modify this theme you're working on, so it's rather easy to integrate your own code. The despite of running through a lot of code when you click on refresh or choose some page within the WordPress system, it's going through a lot of code and different PHP files, but the overall performance is rather good, really good, and it's also on an average server. It's no problem to run 10, 15 different WordPress sites without having some performance problems. Then, like I also said, you have continuous updates, which are applied more or less automatically. So, as well, on the one side, WordPress updates itself, and on the other side, updates for the plugins you are using. So, if you click the options referring to this, it can be done more or less automatically. But WordPress also has some limitations. So seen from now the view of an application programmer, or like you are as Omnis programmers, which mainly I think deal with what we call ERP applications, so database driven and with orders and whatever. So WordPress is not really suitable for ERP application like this. There are some plugins in that direction, but they all deal with the concept of WordPress itself, which is based on a data model and an API which deals with pages, with posts, with blogs. And so this is not really feasible and suitable for application programming. So if you want to create an ERP application with WordPress by using plugins like that, or even do your own programming, it also always will be a compromise. Then also security. WordPress is a web page or web application, and so shares all the potential security risk a web page can have. And the more plugins you use, and you never will look inside the source code of all plugins, then the more potential security risks you have. And last point here, WordPress is lacking native out-of-the-box multilingual support. There are also several good plugins for doing that, but if you once have built up a website with a lot of contents, pages, and then you have to choose one plugin for maintaining multilingual features. Once you have chosen one and begin editing, you're stuck to it. So after, you cannot change it anymore without rebuilding the page completely new, because all those multilingual plugins have a different data structure, and if you want to change them, your website will look like it's mashed up completely. Okay, so now let's talk about the integration of Omnis Remote Forms. WordPress, there you have some technical options. The first I want to talk about, and the one I think which is the best to use, is using an HTML iframe-tag. So on the one side, this is a very good option. On the other side, maybe some of you know that iframes are a potential security risk, because they can be used for something that's called cross-site scripting. That means when the content of the iframe is some bad code, malicious code, and tries to access the HTML content, the DOM model, document object model of the parent frame, and do some manipulations and load malicious code and whatever. And by this reason, iframes often are blocked by browser security settings or by firewall settings, whatever, or firewalls are doing some stateful inspection where they look, okay, where are the contents of the main page coming from, what's the domain, and what's the contents coming from of the iframe. And if they are different, so here you have www.mycompany.com, and in the iframe you have www.anothercompany.com. Then this is the classic scenario for cross-site scripting, and it may be blocked. So in that case, or you should use the same domains or the same IP addresses for both the WordPress, the site, the container, and the Omnis application URL displayed inside the iframe. Then, in most cases, you will be fine. And if you're working inside, or if your site is running within an intranet, I think this is also another problem, because then blockings can be switched off by administrative matters. Okay, technically we have 4 possibilities to integrate an iFrame-Tag into WordPress. The first is by using a plugin. Second is hard-coded in a WordPress page. Third is hard-coded in the HTML part, so in a PHP page directly. And the fourth, and I think best one, so because you can make the thing dynamic, is by using some PHP code. I will demonstrate that now in the next minutes. So here in the background I have an Omnis application running, which is containing the remote task, which is here called RT Omnis and WordPress, and then a simple remote form, which is called RF demonstration, which okay, it's not very great user interface design, but it's just a proof of concept of how it works. Okay, so this is the WordPress page, and here, well, where is it? Okay, so this is the WordPress page I have set up to demonstrate that, and here I have first I have to log in. This is okay. And here in the list of installed plugins, I have chosen one plugin called iFrame, which allows you to insert a so-called shortcode in a page. And here iFrame hard-coded in WordPress page, so that means this is no, this isn't. It's yeah, using iFrame plugin. So this is bitte?
Source.
Größer oder?
Ja. Kannst du es irgendwie aufzoomen oder so? Control-Maus oder was geht das denn?
Nee, das geht hier. Weil wenn ich jetzt in der Auflösung nochmal runtergehe, PowerPoint schaltet eh wieder zurück. Also ich kann hier höchstens dann die
Schriftgröße ändern vielleicht?
Nee, auch nicht.
Plus.
Nochmal Lupe, Bildschirmlupe. So.
Ah. Guck mal, das kannst du dann
Okay. So this is the code for the iframe, or just the code this plugin wants to see. So usually shortcodes start with a square bracket, then you have some parameters, the source. So this is the Omnis page where the Omnis JavaScript client will be initiated. So this is also on the same machine, but on this IP address. And then you can frame an ID and specify the width, the height, and so on. Okay, now I'm going to turn magnification on back, and when I go to view page, then it will look like this, and you can work on it. And so the WordPress client, the remote form, takes about, I think, 500 pixels in width, and it's set to 100% because if you know WordPress, you know that WordPress is also working with so-called sidebars left and right. And so this space on the right is reserved for a sidebar. That means I cannot use it for the main content. So I'm using almost 100% of the space available. But this is dependent on the theme you use. Other themes are more or less designed for full screen, are not using sidebars, but this depends on you. So this is working nice and easily, but like the other options, it's more or less static. So for example here, HTML and template page, here you don't have anything. Here you just have plain text, which will be displayed, and you don't see anything about integrating the Omnis plugin. But here, you see something. Each page you create in WordPress is based on a so-called template. And templates are mainly are shipping with a theme and are created by the theme designer, but you can create your own page templates, and when creating a new page, you can select the page templates here. And here you see I defined one which is called Omnis JS Client HTML, and this is a normal or standard PHP page, which you can see. Where is it? Page Omnis Client PHP. Here. So WordPress recognizes a template page first from its location, so it has to be in the sorry. It has to be located in the theme directory of WordPress, so in the upper level, and it has to start with the word page dash, and then some name chosen by yourself, and then the first lines have to be a comment, then template name, and the name of the template like it will be displayed in your WordPress page editor. And here, this is the part where usually the content of the pages are displayed, so that means you see some PHP function. If have posts, then blah blah blah, the post, so here the content is displayed. Here, this is PHP, the content. This is the whole content of the page is read from the database and displayed. And before it, I have placed a normal iFrame-Tag without plugin, so accessing the page on this WordPress HTML. And this is also working fine. And looks like this. But once again, we have an Omnis remote form inside WordPress, but we don't have any interaction, and this is what we want to, or what I think, which makes the thing really interesting for developers. So to have some interaction between Omnis and WordPress. And so the fourth, I think I'm gonna skip the other one, the third one. The most interesting part is to have a page which allows interaction between Omnis and WordPress, and this is done with the PHP and template page. So here, once again, you see just some text code, but the template is somewhat different. It's called Omnis JS Client PHP, and this is this one. And here,
Klaus?
Yep.
Can you increase it, please?
Let me see, I can do it here in
Control plus. Geht das nicht einfach mit Control plus?
Das würde mich jetzt wundern. Oh, das. Oh, ne, machen wir das? Nee, das ist nicht funktioniert.
Oder Control Maus hat?
Nee, da muss ich, I think I have to, where is it? Spiele, das, ja, here. Just increase the font to maybe 14. Oops.
Nein. Nimm lieber die Bildschirmlupe.
Okay, so. Okay.
Thank you.
So. Okay, so here I have defined some PHP variables. So the first is the frame ID, then the Omnis URL once again, where the page initializing the JavaScript is located, and the name of the form. And then I create a URL called Omnis URL. Then this is this one here with dot and equal sign. This is like plus equal sign C++ or C#. So I concatenate a string like the conf function in Omnis. Then here a PHP or a WordPress function get the ID. That means each blog post, each page has a unique ID. And this is the one of the page displaying right here. And then if the length is a string operation, string length of on this form is greater than 0, this also will be added to the URL. And then here with echo, I display or write some text into the HTML part of the page. Then here, this is the iframe ID, Omnis frame ID, then the source, and so on. And like you see here, after the URL, I add some query parameters. So after the question mark. So the first is post ID, and the second, if available, is on this form, is the name of this form to be displayed. So this will display the page on this WordPress HTML, which is usually generated by Omnis itself when you right-click a remote form for the first time and you test in the context menu, as you may know. Then it will take the template page in the HTML directory of your Omnis installation and modify it a little bit and display the form. So this is more or less the same HTML form, but I did some manipulations with it to achieve what I want. First here, in the first part, you probably know it, and I didn't modify it. So here you have some CSS style sheets loaded, cascading style sheets, which are needed by Omnis itself. And then here you have 3 JavaScripts loaded, which are also needed by the Omnis JavaScript client. And this one, the third one, is containing jQuery. This means that in this page we have jQuery available, and I thought, why not make use of this? Because what we have to do is first query the parameters passed to the page and then add it to the calling string of Omnis. So that means in the original page, in the body unload tag right here, you will find a function which directly initializes the Omnis JavaScript client after the page is loaded. But for us, for our purpose, this is too early. So here I have created a function called init.js client, which is which is executed first. Then over here I have created a function which is called getParamValue. So if you want, or you will be sent this source code files after the conference, so you can have a look at it and modify it yourself. So getParamValues will query the parameters passed to this HTML form, and here you just call it getParamValue on this form, and if it's not empty, if it's not undefined, it will, with the jQuery function, which is usually starting with a $, then here you locate the object. So this is the ID. So with an hash at the beginning of the name, you locate the ID or of an element in the document object model, and then modify its attribute data on this class and write the content of the variable on this form into it. You set the attribute. And you do the same with the Omnis object 1, where the Omnis client is instantiated, and modify the parameter value post ID. And the line where the Omnis client is instantiated looks like this. That means here you have the data web server URL and so on, and here I have the parameter, the user-defined parameter Omnis class, RF demo, and the parameter post ID, data post. They have all to start with the name data, but in your code, so that it will be recognized by Omnis. And I switch off the magnification glasses when I go to my Omnis application and to the remote task. So this is this one. Okay, and in the construct, so here I can use, wrong, I have it here. Then in the construct method you have one parameter called p-params, and then this will contain those variables. So when I set a breakpoint here and then go to this page and click on view page, then okay, Omnis starts blinking. That means now we're in debug mode and I can have a look at my parameter value, and when I look at it here, we have come on. Here we have our user-defined parameters on this class and post ID, which is RFDemo and 54, and those ones will be evaluated within the Omnis application now. I click on go back to PHP. Then here in my remote form, WordPress post ID 54 is displayed, and when starting this application, I create a database session to the MySQL database WordPress is using, and I know a little about the structure of the WordPress database, and I know where it stores the posts. And here I get the data of the post, and if you compare it to the text which WordPress outputs here, it's exactly the same. So communication is working in this way. So now about databases. To get back to the demonstration. Oh. So, okay, we're going through that. Yeah, short. Second message about integrating a WordPress page into an Omnis JavaScript client page into WordPress is not using an iframe, but directly integrating it in the WordPress page itself. So you can do it from a technical point of view, it's not a problem at all, but it's some kind of risky, or you can have unexpected results in design and behavior. Why? Because for the Omnis JavaScript client page to work, you have some requirements. So you have to load the CSS files, then you have to load the Omnis JavaScript files, which drive the whole thing, and you also have to load the jQuery files Omnis is using. But WordPress itself is using jQuery, and you never know which version, and you only can reference a JavaScript library once in a page without having the risk of unambiguous call, and you don't know where it's going to. And then you always have the risk that either WordPress is not working with the Omnis jQuery version or the other way around. So to avoid this, it's better to use an iframe or to test it very extensively. But then maybe if you're shipping your application and your customer is using another theme, then the whole mess starts again. So better use an iframe. Then, like I said, it's best to use the same domain. Then database communication. So Omnis can use the same MySQL database, but it doesn't make very much sense. You can read from it, but I think since WordPress has its very own database model, it's storing objects, complex objects, maybe from post contents, and plugins store their own objects in form of JSON strings, which are stored as flat text in blob size, blob fields inside the database, and I wouldn't mess around with that or manipulate it directly. So if you do it, you must know very exactly what you do. So reading is okay, writing I wouldn't do it. Then also WordPress, writing into the Omnis database, or then you would have to break the design guides of WordPress. You would have to go down to SQL level. Then on the other hand, first you're limited more or less to MySQL. Not really, there are also some kind of other drivers for other SQL servers, but probably often will have a scenario where you don't really have physical access to the other database. So that means that the port to MySQL or SQL server will not be open. So this also doesn't make very much sense. So in the end, it's better to have two different databases, probably the database of your Omnis application, which already exists and which you can access right to, from your Omnis Web Client application. So, but what to do to enable interaction? So the buzzword, the secret, well, not the secret word, so the is web services, and the good news is WordPress has an own integrated REST API. PHP, it's not a problem for it to act also as a REST client. So this is just some lines of code and you got it. And Omnis itself, as you know, acts as a REST server and client also perfectly. But then the drawback, since version 4.7, Omnis WordPress has its own REST API integrated, very good. But for a lot of functions, and especially for writing, we need some authentication, because otherwise you would allow anybody to write into your WordPress database by using the REST API, creating posts, creating pages, or manipulating pages, and this is not what you really want. So if you don't know who really does it. So that means some authentication is required. And this is the bad part about it. So WordPress 4.7 and higher, we have WordPress 4.9.5 now, just allows, as far as I know, and I did some research, it just allows OAuth 2. So this is the authentication method that's available and should be used, and Omnis at the moment is not capable of this. So it's, no. But on the other hand, I have good news again. There is a plugin which is called WP REST API, which is created by the same guys as the genuine WordPress API now, but it's still available. You can install it. And if you install another plugin, Basic Authentication, which can be downloaded here, you can do basic authentication by passing username and password in the HTTP header to WordPress, and can authenticate yourself to WordPress, and then you can do whatever you want. And so this is what I demonstrated here. So in
You've got 2 minutes.
too many fingers on keyboard error. Okay, here in this page is exactly what I want to show. So here I have a second tab where I have 2 URLs, where I just do some get operations, so just reading to demonstrate it. And here, this is the URL. And second, I once again go into the magnification. So, this is the URL, the REST resource, where you can read the last 10, or the first 10 pages. I just have no posts in that case, posts. And I just have 2 inside my WordPress page, and then if I say call REST WS, then here this is the JSON text which will be returned by WordPress. And I also made the effort to break it down to a list. So this is the first post with the title, the ID, the status, the page, the author, and so on. And this is the second one. So that means here you can get everything you want from WordPress and display it or work with it in your application. And if you use HTTP post or put methods, you can create even new pages, new posts, whatever you want, even new users. And just to show it how it works the other way around. So this is the last I want to show. I've created another page template which is called REST client, and here I've got some code which once again, here, which will call a function I wrote myself. It's called REST API with the method get. Then Omnis URL is defined somewhere above, and then an additional parameter which is not important right now. And this page or this function is included in the functions PHP. The functions PHP, whoever has been working with WordPress, is a very basic PHP file which is called at the very beginning of loading a page in WordPress. And here I have included a page called Omnis scripts, not a page, a file, Omnis scripts PHP in some subdirectory, and this file looks like this. So this is the code in PHP you need to call a REST web service. So 10, 12 lines, and it will return a string. And in the Omnis client REST PHP, so when this one is called, it looks like, once again, PHP REST client Omnis as a REST server. So this is not very spectacular. So it's working very fast. It's querying an Omnis database with our beloved music application. And and it's querying a record inside the albums table with the ID 10, and this is the content of this record in its JSON representation, and you have it available inside PHP of your WordPress page, and can once again do with it whatever you want. Okay, and I think
That's it?
yeah, I think
Any questions?
that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
Yes, one question. When you use the iFrame, you set a height of the page.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also have something for like that it will be expandable, listening to the page how big it is?
Yeah, so you can assign some CSS attributes to it so that it will react very flexible and also be responsible. Now responsive, something different, so that it will adapt to the size of your page. And you also can do that dynamically by querying screen parameters, whatever, from PHP. So there's no limit.
Good. Thank you very much, Klaus.